Eating and Drinking in Ulma Part 2. After leaving the village and returning to their overwet camp, Ilgas and Milkas couldn't even start a fire. The humidity was too high, so they opted to cuddle up next to each other and cover themselves with everything they had, although they didn't add anything. But both knew that they had ruined it, but that they had to move on. Their mission was more important, and in the end, despite the rain not stopping, both ended up falling asleep. Their nocturnal hope that by dawn the rain had stopped vanished as soon as they opened their eyes, although it was no longer raining so violently. They prepared the saddles with their feet completely muddy, and the truth was that they had to continue their journey inside the forest to protect themselves somewhat from the rain, and because even if it was slower, the horses could move better than in the neighborhood outside. The road through the forest was difficult and tiring. There was also the fact that neither of them wanted to speak to the other. They were closed in on themselves, as if seeing that blood had taken them away from reality, and not because they were Reds who were executed, but because they had contemplated the path of the order, a path so hard that it even applied to the Reds. The general had applied justice to some comrades without hesitation. What if they failed and it was their turn to die? They did not want to stop longer than necessary all day, a sad and bitter day, not only because of the rain, but also because their hearts could not find the way to go on. As the night took over the sky, the rain became more intense, and finally Ilgas made a sign to his companion to set up camp. The rain was falling with some violence when they heard the horses stirring restlessly, and the rain suddenly seemed to stop. Milkas went out to see the animals neighing as if they had seen a ghost, and when he saw that the rain was almost completely gone, he made the mistake of looking at the sky. There among the treetops the pale light of the moon allowed him to see as the clouds ran fast, forming a halo over a good part of the forest. Uneasily called his partner, and both were stunned by the spectacle. "What's going on?" Ilgas asked without taking his eyes off the image above them. At that moment a fiery light, an orb of light like a star, positioned itself over the forest, and the clouds swirled around it. He was far away, but not far enough that they could see him clearly despite the branches and trees. "Is that magic?" Milkas exclaimed as if her breath ran out. At that moment the forest seemed to be completely silent, as if even nature was expectant before the orb of light that floated over the forest, attentive, as if holding its breath, tensely. "It's beautiful," Milkas couldn't help saying it. Even the steeds had calmed down before the beautiful spectacle, unaware that what they saw was an ancient magic. "This gives me a bad feeling, Milkas. Let's go now," added his partner, breaking the spectacularity of the moment. They both turned to disarm the camp and take off when a sound like the wild cries of hundreds of birds in unison spread through the forest. They both turned scared and saw how the orb of light got smaller and fell like a torrent of light, and the instant the column seemed to touch the ground a terrible shock wave ran through the forest, making each of the trees creak, even their bodies. Then the column shattered into hundreds of rays, and the roar that followed was terrible. It seemed that an army of drums were making their bodies vibrate. The earth under their feet shook as if it were a tremor, and soon the smell of a subtle fire reached them. "I don't know what that was, but I don't intend to stay and find out," Milkas said nervously as you untied the tents with his hands sweaty and trembling. The horses were also restless like Ilgas, who prepared them with a strange look as if he was going to faint at any moment. "We must leave now," he said in whispers, as if he was talking to himself. Milkas finished putting things away and immediately left. "We must continue, we must get away from this cursed forest." Ilgas mounted his horse. "It seems that the gods have agreed to shutter us and let us know what we are getting into." Milkas could not hide his concern either, but he could not do anything other than redirect his thoughts towards his goal. Get to Ulma as soon as possible, let's go at once. The more time we spend in this forest, the more I feel that I will not be able to move on. Let's leave before I regret all this. That night they advanced without stopping, trying to stay as close as possible to the edge of the forest. They advanced with fear but without stopping until the morning sun made them realize that they had gotten far enough away and that their bodies were asking for a rest. Just like the horses that could barely move on, they had no choice but stopping for that day to take a well-deserved rest, although there was nothing to do with it. The rest of the trip to Ulma was quite calm, although long, and between them there was no major conversation. Both had too fresh in their minds everything they had experienced on the edge of the forest of Atlantis, and the truth is that during the whole trip there was always present the desire to escape, but not simply to escape, but to flee at full speed as one who escapes from the greatest possible terror, as if hell herself were chasing them. The pass before entering the Ulma Valley was the meeting of two mountains that left a path before entering the valley. It was a beautiful and quiet place. The green meadows stretched everywhere except on the path that led to the farms further afield and then to the walls of Ulma. The vast majority of the cultivated land was towards the mountain, in the interior of Ulma towards the east at the foothills of the mountains. Both Reds entered the pass and headed towards Ulma with a firm stride, but not especially swift so as not to arouse any suspicion. When they reached the walls of Ulma, the city guard stopped them. "Good morning, gentlemen," said the city guard who met them. "Do you have a trade pass or are you coming for tourism?" Milkas stepped forward. "We're tourists." He would have wanted to say something more and sound friendlier, but the trip had been devastating. The guard frowned instantly when he felt despised. "Peace is a reality in this city, for now you can enter, but know that we do not like excesses." "Easy, the journey has been too tiring for us to even go out and drink a jug of bara." The guard snorted his annoyance. "I hope so." He gave Ilgas a look that he wasn't even able to make a gesture of greeting. The guard let them pass and they left in search of an inn, although in them there was still that feeling that in the inn anything could happen. Neither of them sensed that their stay in Ulma would mean much more than simply completing a mission, but that it would be a struggle for survival.
If you like our work, do not forget to like it and subscribe to receive notifications of our next stories. If you want to support our editorial project, you can follow us on Patreon, where you will find our project in more details, or support directly through Flow in the description links.